So this is long overdue. Farid Leaks, aka Farid al-Bahrani, aka Farid Responds, did an interview with a former friend of mine some time ago. He didn't miss any opportunity to try to make me look like I was a bad Muslim. He called it the real reason Samir left Islam with Aarij Anwer. I had this in my backlog to deal with properly, to respond to this and to show you just how petty and desperate these guys are when it comes to defending their religion. This is your friendly ex-Muslim. I create videos reflecting on Islam and my thoughts as a former Muslim. Let's have a listen to what they have to say about me.
So you sent me a DM saying that Samir told you before leaving Islam that he struggled with fasting.
So the very first thing that they want to mention is that I struggled with fasting. Notice that they've already jumped into personal attacks, something that's totally irrelevant to arguments on whether Islam is true or false. Notice that they're more interested in discussing personalities and making character attacks over ideas. The video is only 2 minutes in and already the red flags are showing. As the video continues, you will see just how desperate Farid is to paint me as a bad Muslim. He didn't miss a beat when Aarij messaged him to bring him on the show and to talk shit about me.
Please tell us about that. Give us a bit of a background, or give us a bit of background in regards to who was Samir to you.
Sure. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu ala rasulillah. Samir was somebody I met at university. He's put out a video talking about me and you know, a lot of the stuff in fact, I think most of the stuff he talks about between me and him is factual, that we were friends, we met at university, he was senior, I was junior.
To give you some context, Aarij has done this multiple times, and I've openly challenged him to a debate. I told him, if my issues are all personal, then you should have no problem proving me wrong about my points. To this day, he has not accepted my offer, and he's not famous or anything, so he has nothing to lose by talking to me. If he doesn't want to do it, that's fine. But then stop saying this is about my personal issues, because it's clear to me you don't want to or can't respond intellectually. I don't want to get too much into the former video here, so I'll link it below. But in a nutshell, since I left Islam, he's been attempting to make me look like I was a weak Muslim who left Islam because fasting was too tough. He has repeatedly tried this approach from the day I left Islam. And the last time he did it, even the Muslim community felt he was being slimy by sharing confidential notes from a discussion at the mosque where he was an acting imam/teacher. Not only that, from the very beginning, he admitted to me on WhatsApp that this was his modus operandi. He wanted to show that the holes were not in Islam, but in me. Kind of like the cult members of Nation of Islam who killed Malcolm X because he attacked the false prophet. These bullies want to take you down rather than let the precious ideology be seen for what it is. If you appreciate what I'm doing so far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe.
Right.
But then I got a call. I'm trying to remember who it was from, but somebody called me saying that Samir's having some problems about Islam. This is in 2015, and could you speak to him? Or maybe they said, would you like to speak to him? I don't remember exactly who it was and what they said, but I was like, yeah, for sure, man. Like, Ahlan wa sahlan, welcome. You know, whatever I can do to help, I'm here for that, right? And then we spoke on the phone. I was actually out of the country when we spoke on the phone. He mentioned some concerns. I was actually surprised that those concerns were so devastating to him that he was contemplating leaving Islam, because for me, they seemed quite trivial initially. So when I heard it, I was unsure of what to make of the severity of it. But then, you know, I realized that this is very severe to this individual.
Right.
And then so on the phone, we just, you know, mentioned something brief. And I said, look, I'm going to come back to Canada, then we'll meet and we'll discuss these matters. And then,
have you noticed that people deep in their beliefs are not able to see the clear problems right in front of their eyes? We humans are masters of cognitive dissonance. Many of us are not willing to re-evaluate our former conclusions or our childhood upbringing and are unable to block contradictory. So his immediate dismissal of my issues is telling. But unlike these guys, I had already changed my positions once. I went from Ismaili to Sunni. I threw out my former beliefs because I felt that Ismailism contradicted the Quran. So I was able to do it. Now I want these two to do a thought experiment. Just imagine an Ismaili saying, "Oh look, Samir left Ismailism over that? What a joke. I can't believe he'd want to leave Ismailism over these silly points. Ha 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 ha." Doesn't that sound like what Aarij is saying here? Aarij, of course, would not question why I left Ismailism. He'd be like, "Rock on, dude. You're the man. You left that false sect to join our true sect, the only saved sect." Do you know how much I heard that as a former Ismaili? "MashaAllah, this brother converted from Ismailism. He's such a great guy. I love this guy. I look up to him so much. We should all be more like him. Look, he converted to Islam and he is so pious." This is what I used to hear. But when you leave Sunnism, oh no, he left for that reason? Objective people should try to take off their blinders and consider all claims, not just shrug them off because they don't like the sound of them. Consider that even your position may be false. Don't just blindly accept converts but reject them when they leave. Very one-sided, no?
Then we met for a couple of hours. We had a long conversation about what it is that was bothering him, the questions. I tried to provide answers. Whatever answers I provide, I usually try to provide them from like the primary sources of Islamic literature, right? Like, so if it's tafsir, it's like the primary sources, or if it's hadith, then the primary sources of like the explanations of hadith, or the positions of scholars that is consensus or near consensus, etc. Right? So those are just very standard operating procedure. And I tried to provide answers, and some of those were like, I was like, look, that's a good question. I really don't know what this is, but whatever the answer would be here, I don't remember what issue specifically it was, but I said this is not like a particularly like core tenet of Islam, right? This is like a real like a secondary matter, and a secondary or tertiary matter isn't like necessarily the reason why a person abandons their faith.
Right.
Ah, even he admits, "I don't have all the answers, but it's not a big deal, bro. Just chill, bro. Not a big deal. So what if Muhammad did a bunch of terrible things and took away the rights of women, took away the rights of adopted children, and taught hatred of non-Muslims for 1400 years? Not a big deal that the Dhul Qarnayn story makes no sense, that he saw the sun setting in a murky pool, and that this sounds like a totally made-up story that just coincidentally matches another made-up story called the Alexander Syriac romance. Nah, it's not a core tenet of Islam. It's just a story in the Quran. Just believe in Allah and chill out, bro." Right, bro. But no, this is not how we should operate. If the religion has problems, that means it's not from God. Allah is Al-Latif, Al-Khabir, right? He knows the most subtle things about the universe. He is the creator of the binary star system and the galaxy and the universe and the living cell. Yet he makes mistakes in the Quran that a 12-year-old today wouldn't make. We need to expect better from Allah.
Right.
So as we're talking about this, that's when the issue of his struggles with the pillars of Islam came to the forefront. You see, and that for me was kind of like clarifying the picture, because here is the reality, right? Let me jump into this. That my sharing these details about Samir's struggles with fasting, like what's the reason behind that, right? What's my objective?
So the reason why he has to explain himself now is because he looks like a slime ball in bringing up things we discussed in private. And like I said, even many in the Muslim community told him off for this. Yet he doesn't want to quit. He's doubling down now in his interview with Farid. That's all he has to offer though. Samir didn't like fasting. Samir didn't like fasting.
The objective is that, like, Islam for us, the way we understand it, is built on pillars. When a pillar goes missing, like in a building, the building will collapse. Similarly, leaving a pillar of Islam with intent hastens the collapse of a person's Muslim identity. It hastens it exacerbates the spiritual struggle, which in turn leads to making an intellectual struggle even worse.
Nah, bro, just be honest. You're trying to find any dirt you can throw at me because that's all you have. All you can come up with is he didn't like fasting or he found fasting tough. And yes, I found it tough. Watch my video on why I don't like Ramadan for more on this. You'll see that Ramadan is a really ridiculous and unfair system of fasting that is forced onto the Muslim world. Optional intermittent fasting with water is great. Ramadan fasting, or should I say feasting, is not.
Right.
So as I was grappling with the questions and answers, and also trying to figure out why are these questions so devastating to a person, that is when that information was provided by him to me, then it kind of became more clear to me that, oh, okay, there is actually an abandonment of a pillar of Islam with intent, and that, that's a spiritual struggle that is making the intellectual worse.
Leaving a pillar with intent. What BS is this? Many Muslims I know have trouble with Ramadan fasting here in Canada. It's as long as 17 hours a day, repeated for 29 or 30 days. Heck, up north it's even 19 hours. Even some of my family members who live in some of the up north areas in Canada had a tough time with 19-hour fasts done day after day. You know the majority of Muslims don't pray 5 times a day, right? But many of them fast. I used to do both. For 15 years I did it. I fasted every single day in every single Ramadan, making up any missed fasts. Ask my wife. I even used to keep track of her missed fast for her because she was either pregnant or breastfeeding or on her period. Ramadan was a big part of her life, man. We used to go to the masjid together. All 4 kids at the time, plus my wife and I, we would go and eat iftar there regularly and stay for Taraweeh. This is straight up slander, Aarij. You are a real douchebag to lie and say I was leaving a pillar with intent. You are completely misrepresenting what I told you. I did not leave any pillar. I missed 1 day of fasting in 2014 because I wasn't sure if I still believed anymore. And then I fasted the rest of the month and even made up the missed fast. In 2015, the year after that, I fasted every single day until I left Islam. And I was praying 5 times a day too, unlike the rest of the Muslims around me at the office and in my life that didn't pray. I used to be the one asking those Muslim co-workers, come pray with me. I was the one reminding them it's time for Jummah, let's go. I was the one who often led the prayers in the prayer room. Just ask my former friends who was the most religious of them. Ask them, was I sincere? Ask my wife, ask my kids. These lies make me mad because they are so far from the truth. You tell your friend who you think is trying to help you, you missed a day fasting, and then he goes around and blabs on the internet, this guy abandoned a pillar of Islam. He abandoned fasting because it was too tough. It's worth showing how desperate these guys are to make anyone that talks about Islam critically bad so that Muslims will discount all of my points. You can see here that Aarij is a person who is not able to comprehend that there are intellectual problems with Islam. The only thing that makes sense to him is that I didn't like fasting. That's what happens when you're so brainwashed that you can't even acknowledge the problems in Islam have substance, even if you don't personally have those doubts yourself. Yasir Qadi, someone far more knowledgeable than Aarij, knows this. He has at times been completely honest about this, admitting that people are leaving Islam en masse because of the holes in the Quran and in Islam. He has tried desperately to manufacture explanations to fix the holes, like saying Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog, are zombies. Why would he put his reputation on the risk and say something like this? Because he knows the reality is that these ideas, these stories are not jiving in people's minds. They don't fit. They create cognitive dissonance. Aarij, on the other hand, all you can say is, Samir didn't like fasting.
Right.
So not
right.
always this happens, right? There's
Right,
a lot of people
right.
who have spiritual struggles, but certainly when the building is already started to catch fire, you see, the pillar being removed from it is going to just hasten its collapse.
Right.
Do you guys realize that many Muslims don't fast and it still doesn't stop them from being Muslim? They continue being Muslim for the rest of their lives, despite the fact that they miss fasting or even worse, praying. The funny thing is, Not praying is a bigger sin than not fasting. Some scholars even say that giving up salah is kufr. Yet these same Muslims that don't pray a prayer in their life fast. Yet I didn't miss the fast, I just didn't like them. I found them invasive and overwhelming. See my Ramadan video. This is what happens when you have nothing left to pick on. You come up with whatever you can.
Right.
I wanted to provide context.
Naturally.
That was like, this was an individual who had this struggle, and he abandoned the pillars with intent. And he told this himself to me, right? That he abandoned fasting in 2014 as it was too hard.
Aarij, you are such a Pinocchio. I did not abandon fasting because it was too tough. I stopped fasting for the day, as I myself told you, because I wasn't sure if I was Muslim anymore. It had nothing to do with toughness and everything to do with the fact that I had doubts in the religion. I do remember the day quite clearly. I went to the mall with my wife. I bought a Starbucks coffee. No, I'm not sponsored by Starbucks. And we chatted about things. She asked me to talk to some Muslim brothers, some Muslim friends of mine, about my doubts. And then I decided after those conversations that I will bury my doubts and I will remain Muslim. You are such a big fat liar. I never ever said I abandoned fasting because it was too tough. And if I abandoned fasting, how in Allah's name did I end up in the masjid for iftar in 2015 listening to Sheikh Dawood's butt tell me about how the scientists don't know anything and Allah knows better how he holds up the sky without pillars that we can see? That was a final straw that brought back all my initial doubts and made me end up leaving Islam after further investigation. You see, dude, your story is Swiss cheese. You took little pieces of what I said to make a story to make yourself feel better for wasting your precious lives over a lie because you don't want people to listen to me. Let's play your game. Samir abandoned fasting, so that's why he left Islam. Does that make any sense? Not fasting would make it harder or easier for me to be a Muslim. It would make it easier, Einstein. Let's say we go to the Imam and we say, Imam, is it better that I stop fasting because I find it too difficult, or should I just leave Islam? What do you think, Imam? What would the Imam say? Any reasonable Imam would say, okay, if you can't fast, then don't fast, but remain Muslim. Allah is merciful. Not fasting is a sin, but maybe one day you can make up for it. Maybe one day you'll get your Iman stronger. Would anyone tell you that not fasting is a sign that you should leave Islam or that'll make you leave Islam? It doesn't make any sense. Only a clown would say he missed fasting, he gave up fasting, so he became atheist. That's a complete non sequitur. People don't stop believing for that reason. People first have to believe and then they do the rituals, not the other way around. What kind of moron says the rituals make you a Muslim first and then you believe? Even the fast itself. It's not valid unless you first believe and you have the intention to fast before the fast starts. Ask any scholar. If you woke up late one day and you didn't know it's Ramadan and you didn't plan to fast and now it's Ramadan, is your fast valid? No. You can only do this for optional fasts.
Without this context, a Muslim who's watching the video, as I was listening to his conversation when it was happening, would be like befuddled at how is this person leaving Islam based on these concerns, right? And they would then think perhaps that this is like a purely intellectual struggle that this what person was going through. And then his final conclusion is maybe even like a acceptable or maybe even a noble conclusion.
Right.
Now he admits it. If they can't find a way to slander me, people might consider that I was right about leaving Islam. That maybe it was even noble.
But
I would like to comment about that.
yeah, please.
When I first saw his video, and I've seen his video I think like twice.
Farid is my biggest fan. He watched my videos twice, and even made multiple response videos to me. Hopefully he's a future ex-Muslim as well.
And he comes off as someone who left Islam due to the shubuhat, due to intellectual issues, due to arguments that he had no answers for. That's what he comes off as. He titles the video, Abdullah Samir leaves Islam after 15 years of promoting it. When I read this, I thought to myself, oh my God, Abdullah Samir left Islam? And then I remembered, I was like, who's Abdullah Samir in the first place? I don't even know. So he markets himself, right? he markets himself as that guy, as Akhi Wallah al-Azim. I thought this guy was like not necessarily a scholar, but at least a high level student of knowledge. That's what I assumed. I assumed he was like a famous da'iyah. I had no idea he was just this no. What did he do? How did he promote Islam?
So you'll see, Farid tries to now go to something else. He tries to focus on the fact that I wasn't a scholar, but I never claimed to be one. He's trying to focus on this, that he was a nobody. Thing is, I never claimed to be anyone other than a dedicated Muslim that wanted to promote the deen in my own way. That's what I did. But I don't need to tell you that. Let Aarij tell you what I did.
So what he did promoting Islam, and actually that's true.
Yeah.
He did promote Islam
Yeah.
a lot.
But before I let Aarij finish, I'm going to point out something funny that you're going to see. As Aarij goes on and on, calling me a pioneer in the online Islamic dawah, providing a service to the Muslims before YouTube and social media and so on, and praising what I did, you'll notice Farid gets more and more uncomfortable. And so he tries to stop him and immediately changes the topic. Watch and see.
So what he did promoting Islam, and actually that's true.
Yeah.
He did promote Islam
Yeah.
a lot when he was a Muslim. Okay, and that's something that no one should take away from him.
Yeah.
He made websites that were ahead of its time. He had a website called Light Upon Light where he posted lectures. He had a really a big project that was called Ayah by Ayah or something, or verse by verse Quran, where somebody was before. This is before, like all this information before. I think before social media, right? Like before Instagram and before all the web apps that we see. Sorry, not Instagram, but all of the web apps that we see today. Before all of the web apps and before all of the phone apps, right? In that era where there was already YouTube and Facebook, and the net was expanding into web apps. So he made many websites that were
to get that information out there, basically.
Yeah, resources for Muslims. That's what it was. Resources like a collection of video lectures on a site dedicated, right?
So I would like to add.
Farid can't take Aarij praising what I did and had to change the topic back to doubts since his attempt to use Aarij to slander me didn't work here.
So yes, I assumed that it was as you put it well. It's just a matter of him being influenced by the shubuhat and him being influenced by the doubts, and he built this narrative by marketing himself in that way.
Yeah,
and that's why we're even doing this, because akhi, seriously, some random guy who had a website, who put some lectures up. And that was good. It was good. I mean, it's a good thing to do. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it was no doubt.
However, he wasn't a student of knowledge.
Not at all.
He wasn't a student of knowledge. And you see, I don't want to like. I don't want to like be very frank about my opinion of him, but I don't have a high opinion of him. I have quite a low opinion of him. So I don't want to get into that. But it's very important to let audiences know, in my opinion, it's very important to let them know what led to this.
Yes.
And 1,400,000 views. There's sure, a lot of people rewatch a video, but I'm assuming there are 1 million unique views there. 1 million people saw that video. A lot of Muslims may have been influenced, and yes, there are Muslims who have been influenced by that video. People have saw that video, and that started to shake their faith, simply because this guy marketed himself as someone who was somebody, and he wasn't. So let's get back to the matter. Fasting. He struggled with fasting. There was another thing that I saw on his website. It's up on his website. And again, this isn't like some sort of personal thing. Abdullah Samir himself has the video up. I'm not exposing him or anything like that. This is something that you can find on his channel. He has a clip of him talking about how talaq, the whole concept of talaq and the rules of talaq, that almost ruined his life. Because basically he divorced his wife 3 times on 3 separate occasions, and he was supposed to leave her. He knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded Muslims that divorce their wives 3 times to leave them, and that's it. However, he chose to ignore that, and he decided to ignore the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He decided to ignore the Sharia. He just said, hey, you know what? I feel like I know better. I don't want this thing to ruin my life. And you know what? I'm going to stick with this. And I do believe, I sincerely believe that this led him down a slope. And this plus the fasting and all that, I'm who knows, there may be some other things as well that had led him down this path.
Okay, now the talaq issue. Yes, as he mentioned, I made a video about this, and this is actually a really big problem in Islam that puts the entire marriage of a couple at risk at the whims of a man's emotions. Even though I did say talaq multiple times, I decided that the love for my wife and being together was worth more than some words I said in anger. I grew a lot. I got married at 21, and I had a lot to learn about women. My marriage to my wife was my first experience with a woman. And anyone that's been married knows that that understanding women takes some time. I mean, what normal couple doesn't regret saying some things in anger to each other? Only in Islam do you have this issue where you can divorce someone and end up regretting it, and then you can't get it back until your wife has sex with another man before you can marry her again, which is called halala. The whole divorce system is so stupid that this used to cause me massive cognitive dissonance as a Muslim. I couldn't square 2 and 2 together. That this was from God, yet it was such a stupid and messed up, terrible system. And so this brings us to the end. I just responded to the first 15 minutes of the video, which addresses the core points against me because they waffle on and don't really say much, but repeat themselves. In conclusion, their entire argument is ridiculous. People don't leave Islam because they stop fasting. Stopping fasting doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make you any more likely to not believe. Belief starts with certainty. And then ritual happens after. People's doubts don't get worse because they don't fast. Fasting is just one ritual among many. Yet, even though I was dedicated to this ritual, I found it a struggle. That's part of being a Muslim, right? You do things that are tough. It doesn't invalidate your faith. If these guys wanted to actually have a conversation with me, then why don't they? What invalidated my faith was a combination of factors. My ever-growing knowledge of science and the world led me to realize the Quran is a flawed book, and when I decided to challenge it, it just fell apart even worse. It could have happened the other way, that the Quran would have proved itself as I looked into the details. But alas, every single thing I used to believe about the Quran as a Muslim ended up false under scrutiny. The ex-Muslim community has been growing since I left Islam. The Muslim community is dealing with a tsunami of apostasy, and nothing is ever going to put this genie back in the lamp. It's time to admit that Islam is false, and that there is no excuse to not see this for what it is today. If being ex-Muslim for nearly 6 years has taught me anything, is that the holes are just getting worse and worse over time. Islam is a leaky bucket, and soon the holes will be so big that no amount of cover-up and patching will be enough to fix it. My life is so much better since I left Islam. I have no regrets. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. I want to say thank you to all my patrons and donators and supporters. I really appreciate that you guys have continued to support me, despite the fact that I haven't been putting out as much content lately. This is your friendly ex-Muslim signing out.